If let's say hypothetically there is a full-on type of altcoin season during this cycle, even though nothing I say is financial advice, there's three price scenarios that I do want to take a look at when it comes to Axelar's native token called AXL. Now, what is the first one, right? The first one I'm going to talk about is maybe the idea of AXL at $8, around a 26.6x from here, and market cap at that point would be around $8 billion. Now, why wouldn't this maybe surprise me? It's because I like the fundamentals of Axelar. And let me explain the project real quick, because when it comes to Axelar, it's a Web3 interoperability platform. It's quite essentially an open stack to connect all blockchains together. Now, some people may be thinking, okay, who cares about this? Well, I think it's pretty unique and pretty interesting because if we take a look at being focused on interoperability, I think this right here is a pretty cool thing to be focused on because take a look at, for instance, Polkadot. Polkadot is heavily focused on interoperability. And sometimes people like to say that, oh, Axelar is this watered down version of Polkadot. I don't really think so, but it does share a little bit of similarities in terms of being focused on interoperability. And let me explain Polkadot real quick. And I think it gives a pretty good explanation as to what I mean by Axelar, again, being a Web3 interoperability platform. Now, if we take a look at it, lacking interoperability is kind of a big issue because there's many blockchains out there, many networks out there, but because some of them are independent of one another, and if that is the case and they can't freely send data and value to each other as a result of that, then in that sense, they do lack interoperability. Like for instance, what is a very famous example of this? We take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, Bitcoin's very massive, Ethereum's very massive, but because they're independent of one another, they can't freely send data and value to each other. Arguably, they lack interoperability. What steps in and saves a day? Quite essentially something like Polkadot, but then again, by explaining that, I think it kind of gives a little bit of a glimpse as to why I think Axelar is pretty cool because, again, it's a Web3 interoperability platform. But even besides that point, we take a look at, allegedly, there is over 60 blockchains connected with Axelar, which do include Avalanche, Moonbeam, Say, Cosmos, BNB Chain, even the Base network, which is Coinbase's layer 2, so I find that very impressive. Also, we take a look at Arbitrum, Ethereum, and many others. So I like what I'm seeing when it comes to Axelar. Not to mention, we've seen like historical partnerships allegedly when it comes to Axelar with something like Onyx, which is by JP Morgan. And also, again, we've seen historical partnerships with something like Microsoft and even MasterCard. So I find that very impressive as well when it comes to Axelar. I mean, overall, when I take a look at it, sure, it may not necessarily be the most famous project out there, and how can it, right? AXL currently market cap is around like $300 million, but when it comes to the fundamentals, I like Axelar, and we've already kind of seen the formula work a little bit when it comes to Polkadot. I get it, Polkadot's native token is having a pullback, but it's still a pretty massive project, and we've seen, especially back then, in 2021, kind of the attention Polkadot had, right? And how it still kind of has retained, somewhat a glimpse of that. So we've kind of seen that. I'm not necessarily saying Axelar is going to be more popular than Polkadot, but then at the same time, if it achieves maybe a glimpse of it, wouldn't surprise me because they're pretty much focused on kind of similar things, arguably, when it comes to the interoperability aspect. And I do like that when it comes to Axelar. So when it comes to AXL, maybe at the price of $8, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if, let's say, there is a fully fledged type of altcoin season. Now, the second scenario I want to take a look at is $9. Market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be around $9 billion. That's a 30x from here. I mean, we've seen Shiba Inu pretty much exceed this market cap by around $30 billion back in 2021. I'm not saying it's going to be more popular than that, but this doesn't seem like too outlandish of a market cap to me, but this is just my thought process. Now, the third and final price scenario I do want to take a look at is AXL maybe at the price of $10, around a 33x from here, and market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be around $10.3 billion. Now, the reason why this wouldn't surprise me is just because on top of the fundamentals of Axelar, which I talked about earlier on the video, I also take a look at how there's supposedly over 600 million crypto owners currently, and that's supposedly more than ever before in history. And we take a look at in the peak of the 2021 bull run, there was around 300 million crypto owners, so we basically have like double that amount. And we also take a look at the Bitcoin ETF and the Ethereum ETF and kind of the hype surrounding that. If, let's say, there is a fully fledged altcoin season, it wouldn't surprise me if it did look better than back in 2021. So maybe AXL at the price of $10, it wouldn't surprise me if, let's say, maybe it hypothetically happened. And now some people may be thinking, okay, what time frame are you looking at? Now, when it comes to me, the timeline that I do want to take a look at is just something that I have based off of history. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen at that exact moment or if ever, right? But then it's just something I do want to explore nonetheless and something that I'm just thinking about. Now, historically speaking, altcoins, they typically peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event as a worst case scenario. So 18 months from the last Bitcoin halving event would actually mean October of this year, because the last one happened in April of last year. With that in mind, though, I don't think that I'm going to necessarily just focus on October because, it may be different, right? But then at the same time, the way I view it is that, let's say it happens in November or December or maybe even Q1 of next year, again, if it, let's say, ever even does, to me, the way I take a look at it is that whenever, again, that timeline is, I just want to stay patient by just holding, waiting, dollar cost averaging, and that's it. To me, it's about preparing, not about finding the perfect moment. It's just about anticipating for me, and that's what I'm going to do, just holding and just waiting, and all I'm doing is just staying patient. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's only the captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.